Let's talk about dairy, because dairy is another one that was controversial in the paleo movement because humans we had breast milk, and then we didn't have agriculture, so we weren't chasing down mammals to milk them, there
Right.
was no dairy ancestrally. But now dairy is very popular, and there's an argument for its nutrition, and of course kids and babies love it. Welcome to Dedicated Joe, a podcast for men like me who want to get the most out of fatherhood. Because I discovered that being a dad can be more than just parenting or providing or surviving the chaos. Learn how I, every day, use being a dad to transform my identity and become the man I was meant to be. I'm your host, Joe Carr. Let's go.
Yeah, so that was like the biggest trigger food for me growing up. I talked about how I had, underlying levels of inflammation and stomach issues and allergies and mucus. Cutting out dairy, growing up on it, I was consuming all the typical dairies and cheeses, and cutting it out when I was 19 or 20, that was magical for me. Like, I saw a lot of relief from being able to breathe through my nose at night again. I would never be able to, it felt like every night I was never able to go to bed and just breathe through my nose. I was a mouth breather mostly because of that. But when I cut out dairy, and switched to, I switched to a plant-based milk, and I was consuming like the coconut and the almond milks for a time being. My wife and I both did. It was about 10 years ago, we switched to raw dairy after having cut out all dairy for a few years. And I did not notice any of the issues that I grew up with. So with the raw dairy, I was completely fine to handle. And we do 2 gallons between our family, 2 gallons of raw dairy a week. We do raw cheeses. We do the raw, well, it's Greek yogurt, but it's not raw because of the way the yogurt is made. And I make my own homemade kefir, or kefir, however you want to say it. So that's basically just fermented raw milk, which lowers the lactose. It makes it more of a tart, sour beverage. But talking like historically about milk and the benefits of it or lack thereof, like you said, it's relatively new to our human diet, which is 10, maybe 12,000 years ago, is the best evidence that we have of humans intentionally consuming dairy. Now, there was some evidence 49,000 years ago in South Africa. It's the Witwatersrand Cave. There was a cave painting of humans consuming milk. And so, which is really cool because we have evidence that humans may have been intentionally consuming milk that long ago, but that's still relatively new in our human timeline. But if you think about it, when humans would have killed an animal when we were hunters, and maybe they would consume every part of that animal, organs, meat, bones, bone broth, there probably was some milk in the mammary glands of that animal in some of them. So maybe they were getting milk, but that's different than intentionally raising a cow or a lactating mammal to consume its milk. So that's a little different. But when you're talking about like dairy, and I get this opposition all the time, is dairy and breast milk is for infants. Why should adults consume it? And that's like the number one pushback that I get when I talk about, hey, I consume dairy all the time, raw dairy all the time. And it is true. Like, that's the only food that we are really designed to consume as mammals is our own mother's breast milk at the time we are born for maybe a couple years old or so. But then we grow out of that. So then I ask them the question, what foods are we designed to eat as humans? And so meat, animals don't get put on this planet just for human consumption. Vegetables don't get put on this planet for human consumption. The thing with humans is we have found a way to learn how to eat a variety of foods and be able to digest and absorb and get calories and nutrients from the foods in our environment. So dairy is one of those examples. We have found a way to basically herd animals and get nutrition. And in a period of food scarcity where our ancestors came from, that was amazing. Like, they now had access to raw milk, which was all milk before the past 150 years or so. We had access to reliable nutrition that was going to nourish them. That was their grocery store. Like, having a herd of animals that you could milk every day, that was their grocery store for them. And same thing with meat and vegetables. We found a way to prepare our vegetables so that way we can digest some of the nutrients from them. We found a way to hunt animals and get the meat and make bone broth. So dairy is really just one way that adults can consume it. long into adulthood. And there's ways to do it. I mean, you can make that into kefir, which lowers the lactose, which maybe people can digest a little bit better. And so if you don't do well with dairy, try raw dairy. If you don't do well with raw dairy, you can try raw kefir. You might be able to digest that, but some people might just not do well with dairy. But for me, adding it back in, it's done wonders. And I'm a fan of it if people want to try it.
Yeah, there's just not much nutrition available in the modern food supply. The vegetables are, I mean, obviously we talked about grains and cereals. All the processed foods are almost nutrient empty. Like there's almost nothing in them. They're just fillers, make you feel full, but have no value. And then our vegetables are way less nutritious than they used to be. Like we've depleted the soil so much, and we've diminished the variety of vegetable. The plant life we consumed ancestrally was something like 10 times more nutrient dense. And then, so meats are still fairly similar. Even conventional meat is better than vegetables. Grass-fed and regenerative meat's even better, but all meat's better. And so there is sort of like an argument that's like, well, milk and dairy, it's more nutritious if it doesn't create inflammation,
right? Like
you're saying, if it doesn't cause congestion or gut issues. Like I get stomach aches from anything. A very small amount of lactose will hurt my stomach, but I can eat fermented dairy because it's very, very low lactose. And so I can do the right kind of cheeses and yogurts and sour cream, things like that. But our daughter, we were sort of avoidant of dairy for a while just out of precaution because my wife had a lot of dairy issues. But my wife's basically healed her dairy issues. Like you, she was super congested and stomach aches and bloated and all this stuff. But through a lot of healing, now she's eating dairy, even regular dairy. And it's generally okay for her. And our daughter too seems to do fine with it. So it's like there's so few foods that we could eat that it's like whether it's ancestral or not, it's kind of like liquid meat. It's got a lot of the benefits of meat in terms of concentrated vitamins and saturated fats and protein, animal protein. But talk about raw. Like there's a lot of controversy around raw. It's illegal in a lot of states. You can't buy it in the grocery store. Why are people afraid of it, and why are you not afraid of it?
This goes back, to the 1850s when we had humans. Again, we tried basically domesticating and putting cows in zoos in the middle of large cities, Chicago and New York City, when cows and all these animals should be roaming in the wide open pastures. We put them next to distilleries and these cows, and we fed them the byproduct of the distillers, which is grain mash. And so they were eating this filth that they shouldn't have been eating. They were living in their own filth. And then they were producing a terrible milk that ended up killing a lot of people, thousands of people in these major cities. And so the method that our government at the time in the mid 1850s decided to do was not to move these animals back out to wide open pasture and just have sanitary practices. It was to pasteurize the milk, which it worked. And pasteurization, and there's different types of pasteurization, which we could talk about. It worked to kill off everything, not just any harmful bacteria in there, but it worked to kill off all the beneficial probiotics, all the enzymes, and it even denatured some of the proteins in that milk. So it went from being a nourishing food for most of humans for the past 10 to 12,000 years in its raw form, and that humans didn't have a problem digesting because of all these beneficial aspects, the enzymes, even little bits of probiotics that are in there that help your gut to digest the lactose, to now being this autoimmune inducing food because of the way that the pasteurization and even the homogenization changes the fat molecules in there and makes them a little bit more autoimmune inducing to certain individuals. Well, over the span of the past 150 years, the types of pasteurization has changed to being a low temp pasteurization. You heat it for a low, maybe like 140 degrees for a half hour. That's a more gentle experience on, it's more gentle on the milk proteins. It's more gentle on the enzymes. But then we've invented ultra pasteurization, which I think was in the 1910s or the 1920s. And you heat it up to 300 degrees for 2 seconds or something like that. And that is so much more harsh on all the enzymes and everything in there. And so I did this experiment on my Instagram channel. I had, and I don't recommend anybody do this. My wife was not very happy about this. I had 4 different types of milk and I left them all sit out in my pantry. Raw milk, an ultra pasteurized, and then I think 2 types of pasteurized, like a 2% and a whole milk pasteurized. And I let them sit there for 2 to 3 months. The raw milk smelled fine. It was surprising to me. The raw milk smelled like a kefir. It was like a cheese almost. It was actually quite pleasant. All three other milks smelled absolutely terrible. It had mold. They pretty much all had mold on them. And that's because the raw milk had all these beneficial probiotics in there to allow life to proliferate. And that was good life, because when you get down to a certain percentage of like this lactic acid bacteria producing in the raw milk, this pathogenic bacteria can't thrive in there. So it's really just proliferating all this good probiotics in there. But all this other ultra pasteurized dairy, it didn't have any life in there. And all it had the ability to do was mold and generate bad bacteria in there. So I'm a fan of raw milk because it has all these beneficial compounds in there. And it's worked for me. It's worked to heal a lot of the issues that I've had with dairy, and it's food in its raw form. And the dairy and my last point here, the farm that we go to right here, they are a Raw Milk Institute certified farm. So they go under a lot of different certifications and testing. They small batch test every gallon of milk that goes out before they sell it to ensure that it's low and virtually empty in all these different pathogenic bacteria. And it's a lot safer than a lot of the pasteurized milks in the grocery store for this reason, because the pasteurized milk in the grocery store can legally have up to 10 coliform CFUs per milliliter, I believe is the measurement there. Whereas my farm tested to have 0 coliform CFUs per milliliter. So it has can have 10 times less harmful pathogenic bacteria in it than pasteurized milk can legally have in the grocery store, which is wild to me. So I trust my farm wholeheartedly. They go through rigorous testing. Not every farm is like that, but there are certain questions you can ask your farm to see if they're doing the right things, and just go see the farm. Just go see what their sanitation methods are.
So people are afraid of raw milk, or they outlaw raw milk because the risk of there being pathogens. So this idea that if you don't boil the shit out of it, it could have bacteria in it. And so you're saying that the way to mitigate that risk is that they actually test for the harmful bacteria and prove that there's none in it before they give it to you, which is more than the grocery store does. They just boil the shit out of it and then hope for the best and don't test it. So you're saying it's actually safer if it's been tested than what you get in the grocery store.
It can be, yeah. They test it and it has 0 parts per million of this pathogenic bacteria. And that was actually one method when they introduced pasteurization back in the 1860s or 70s. That was one method. It was pasteurization. And then it was also just testing the milk from these farms. I can't remember the name. I think it was like Real Milk or something like that back in the 1870s, just to test it. But pasteurization won out. They thought that was easier and they thought it was safer, but all you had to do was just test the milk and see if it was pathogenic before you drank it. And
you can't buy it in the grocery store. It's still legal. Some states you can buy it at a farmer's market. Some you have to go to a farm. Some it's like black market and you have to buy it under the table. So how do people find raw milk if they want to switch?
So I'm blessed to live in Pennsylvania. It's all legal here. You can even find it in some grocery stores here. It's completely legal to sell in grocery stores here. Different states have different laws, but if you go to realmilk.com, that's like a Weston A. Price website. You can find farms near you that sell it. You can see your state's laws. Some states, like mine, you might be able to find it in the grocery store. Some states, you have to buy it directly from the farm. Other states, you have to do a herd share. So you have to buy part of a cow and then it's legal for you to consume it that way. Other states, I think there's only 2 of them. New Jersey, I think, is one of them. And then maybe Nevada is completely illegal. Like you probably won't be able to find it at all unless it's like on the black market or something, which you can get in trouble if you're selling the milk that way. But then there's also ways, and this is true for a majority of states, it'll be listed as for cats and dogs or for pets only, for pet consumption only. And that's really just a loophole to be able to sell it in a health food store or a grocery store. So you can do that and you can buy it and it's literally the same milk. It's just a loophole to be able to sell it to humans. And then the last way, it's not raw, but like I was talking about the low temp pasteurization, there are these companies, there's a few of them in the grocery store that sell in most grocery stores that sell low temp pasteurized milk. So it's the closest that you're going to get to raw. I believe it's heated for like 30 minutes for 100 at 140 degrees. So it's still a little bit gentler. And I know a lot of people have said they can handle that pretty well. But you can try that out. It's as close to raw as you can find.